over and over again. All right, the beauty of the quadratic formula is that it works for every squared problem that you will ever be given. That's the beauty of it. But with beauty also comes danger sometimes. Okay, things that are beautiful can sometimes be dangerous. And there's lots of places to make mistakes in squaring, in square rooting, and reducing. So that's what we're trying to avoid today. All right, so use the quadratic formula. Only when GCF, star, or split don't work. My experience is that people make less mistakes with GCF, star, and split than they do with the quadratic formula. They make more mistakes with the quadratic formula. So don't use it unless you have to. But when you do, let's see if we can use it correctly. Okay, here is just a review. Solve ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 with, and then I'm going to give you the formula. Now, a, b, and c, notice that they're lowercase, they're not uppercase. So what does that mean when a, b, and c are lowercase? Well, it's the opposite of what they were. What did it mean when they were uppercase? Okay, standard form, which meant no fractions. All right, these are not uppercase, they're lowercase, which means you can have fractions, okay? So you can have fractions here. It's a squared problem, it's set equal to 0. If that's the format, then you can use the quadratic formula, which goes as follows. Okay, there's a little song. You may have learned that. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root. Okay, here's where people make mistakes. They put b squared without putting parentheses around it. That would be the first place that you'll be guaranteed to get the right answer if you remember parentheses. So parentheses, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, that's how that goes. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root, parentheses, b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so let's practice that. What I'm going to do is show you two problems that are most commonly missed where there are mistakes to be made in the quadratic formula. So hopefully if you see it, then you won't make that mistake. All right, so learn from other people's and don't make them yourself. So our first example that we're going to solve together is x squared plus 3 equals 10x. Okay, x squared plus 3 equals 10x. Well, first of all, it's not equal to 0. So that's an easy problem to fix. That would be subtracting the 10x to both sides. So that would be x squared minus 10x plus 3, and now that's equal to 0. And so we can identify the values of a, b, and c. We have a, we have b, we have c. Now we can see that c is 3. We can see that b is negative 10, but a doesn't seem to be there. What do we understand is actually there? A 1. Okay, so a is going to be 1. All right, so we're ready to solve this with, oh no, we should try star first. So just a quick check. You know, might we be able to save ourselves a lot of work by doing star? Well, we've got the star of 3 and negative 10, and unfortunately 3 and negative 10 don't work for star numbers, so we do need the quadratic formula. All right, so x equals. So x equals negative b. This is negative parentheses negative b because 10 was already negative. Plus or minus the square root, parentheses, b squared. Minus 4ac. 4 times 1 times 3. All over 2a. All right, it's those parentheses. It's that negative 10 that's going to mess people up. So the answer starts out like this. X equals a double negative would be the positive. And then we've got the square root. Here is where I wish that I could help people get out of their own way. Okay, you're smarter than that. What does it mean to square something? What does it mean to square it? Multiply it by itself. What is negative 10 times negative 10? It's 100. I don't need a calculator to tell me that. All right, negative 10 times negative 10 is a positive number. But for some reason, unbeknownst to me, people will persist in doing this on their calculator. Negative 10 squared, whoops, turn it on, okay? Negative 10 squared. They believe the calculator, they will write negative 100 in their work, and then they will continue on and then wonder why they got the wrong answer. Okay, so first of all, trust your brain. Okay, negative 10 times negative 10 is a positive number. Now, if you're like, oh, I don't trust my math, okay, well then, if you are going to use the calculator, then you have to use parentheses. Okay, negative 10 quantity squared, that's a positive number. It is positive 100. It is not negative 100. So that's the first place that people will catch themselves making a mistake. So that should be positive 100. Minus 4 times 3 is 12. Usually people don't mess that up. Okay, then we have subtraction. 10 plus or minus the square root of 88 over 2. And then here's the second place that people make the mistake. They get really excited when they see a 10 and a 2 and they cross them out like that. And they call it reducing. Okay, that's fake math. Okay, we have fake news out there. You got to know what the real thing is. This is fake math. This is not real math. You cannot reduce within a plus or minus problem. Okay, that is not the right thing to do. So, what is the right thing to do? The correct thing is to break up your 88. 88 is not a perfect square root, but it can be broken up into 4 and 22. Okay, that's how 88 gets broken up. So the correct way to do this is 10 plus or minus. The rad 4 becomes a whole 2, and then we have rad 22 left. Still over 2. And then this is where people get excited, and they cross out those two 2's. Yay, I reduced. Fake math, that's fake reducing. You can't reduce with a plus or minus. Okay? So the real math you need to do is something called a common denominator. 10 needs to be over the number 2 by itself. The plus or minus goes between, and then 2 rad 22 is over a 2 also by itself. That is a common denominator. They share the same denominator. That's what common denominators mean. Then you can reduce. Okay, only when you've split it up into common denominators are you able to reduce. So 10 and 2 for sure reduces, and 2 and 2 reduce, and so the correct answer is 5 plus or minus rad 22. That would be the right answer. All the other ways of reducing are going to get you the wrong answer. So be careful about reducing. So here were two places where people make mistakes. Number 1 on the negatives, and number 2 on the reducing. Okay, the second example I'm going to show you has another place where people will make errors, and has to do with their square roots. So let's try this. The square root of 5 in front of the number, the value of x, minus 1, and then negative 4x squared. So we're going to solve that question. Okay, the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure it's equal to 0. The easiest way to do that is to add 4x squared to both sides. So 4x squared would come in front. The square root of 5 would be by the x, and then minus 1 equals 0. And then to identify what your values of a, b, and c are. So a is 4, b is a square root, which is okay, and c is negative 1. It's totally fine to have a square root in the quadratic formula. You just got to use parentheses, just like you would with a negative. So our solution is x equals negative b. That's negative square root 5, and that's okay to have a negative there. Plus or minus the square root. Now I need parentheses b squared. So parentheses square root 5 squared. Minus 4ac. All over 2a, which is 2 times 4. Negative 1 is my c value. Now again, you don't need your calculator to tell you what this is going to be. You can use what you know in your brain. Because to square something is to multiply it by itself. Rad 5 times rad 5. That's just 5. But you could use your calculator to do it as long as you did parentheses there too. So this is going to be 5. I have a negative 4 times a positive 4 times a negative 1. That's a double negative, so I'm going to get 5 plus 16. And then over 8. So that's going to give me negative square root 5 plus or minus square root 21 all over 8. Here's another thing about fake math. I will get answers where people will say negative the square root of 5 plus or minus the square root of 21 is the square root of 16, because negative 5 and 21 make 16, so that must be the answer. Fake math. You can't add square roots. You can't subtract square roots either. So it's not that. People try and subtract them. Well, negative 5 minus square root 21, that must be negative square root 26. Great. That's fake math also. The answer is the way it was. It's just left that way. You can't do anything more to two square roots. You can't add them, you can't subtract them, you can't reduce them. Negative rad 5 plus or minus the square root of 21 over 8. That's it. You just leave it that way. You don't have to do anything more. So get out of your own way. Don't do more math that's fake math. Just stop with the real stuff and then don't continue. So a couple things I was wanting to show you negative numbers on the calculator with parentheses. I wanted to show you the right way to reduce, okay, because we saw wrong ways to reduce, and then the right way to deal with square roots rather than the wrong way to deal with square roots. So we'll see tomorrow when you come back with questions if any of your mistakes were any of those three. Were they negative mistakes? Were they reducing mistakes? Or were they square root mistakes? Those could be. But hopefully this will help you not make those when you're doing your homework tonight.